Hey there, folks. I'm Chris Burkhardt, president and founder of Placers. I'm here with Brian Saleo. I bet you all didn't know it, but he's a lawyer, consultant, damn good trainer, leader, and he oversees our customers. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing great. How you doing today?
I'm doing very good. If you're a first-time listener, this is our series. It's kind of just short form, 8, 10, 15, 20 minutes of content about a particular workforce and workplace topic. It's kind of interesting to think about the problems that we solve for customers as opposed to services. It's a better way of understanding how people get value out of us. So, Brian, this is a touchier, more intimate topic. We're kind of coming off the pandemic, and it seems like you read trade publications about human resources or just even reading the Wall Street Journal or Fortune magazine, and there's this talk of the impact on the worker. In particular, we're talking about the concept of mental health in general. We've heard from customers and prospects that they're just curious about how other customers are handling this and how they're handling things post-pandemic. And I know we felt this was a topic we really wanted to cover. Why don't I give you the kind of keys to the castle to introduce this in a way that you feel most comfortable?
Sure. So I'm really looking forward to having this discussion because it's something that's very personal to me. And when we first started talking about planning out a podcast series, one of the things that I brought up right away was this is something that I was hoping to talk about at some point. I look around me, and pandemic or no pandemic, I see so many people that I know that are struggling with mental health issues. I think it's something that affects all of us to some degree. Some of us cope with it better than others, but I think the pandemic has certainly exacerbated it, and a lot of people are having really, really tough challenges about it. I've had my own struggles, probably for the last 20 years. I get feelings at times that I don't know why I'm depressed or why I'm worried about something that really isn't that big of a deal. And it's very easy for me to step out of myself and say, pull up your big boy pants and deal with it. But I know, and you've probably even seen in me at times when, if I'm not taking the medicine I'm supposed to take, if I go through one of my spells where, things are pretty good, I think I'm over all that, I'm going to stop taking my medicine. It's had very dramatic negative effects on me and my moods and the way I deal with things. So
first of all, Brian, it's the way that the power of this is your willingness to talk about it in a vulnerable, open way. So yeah. Thank you for doing it. There should not, and I hope there is not as a stigma around this. There's such a high percentage of folks that are dealing with this.
Yeah. There isn't, in the environment that you've created at Placers, there's an acceptance of things like that. I can say that at past employers, I would have had the same struggles that I think a lot of people in the workforce today have, which is, hey, if I bring this up, am I going to lose my job? Or is my employer going to think differently about me? Will they tell other people that I work with, and are they going to think differently about me? Is it going to affect my relationships at work? All those things, you're always worried about being judged because, you're something less than you should be. And the reality is that mental health challenges are no different than having seasonal allergies, having bad eyesight. No offense, I'm not just picking out things you have.
Thank you. And I just got back from the eye doctor, so thanks for pointing that out. Great.
But it's a reality that's in our bodies, it's in our brains, it's something we can't control. And, the less that employers foster that stigma, the better off we're all going to be.
So, Brian, you've told me sometimes I think differently, and Placers reflects that. To me, this is all pretty simple. A human comes to work and you have to help that human be their best, or they can't do their best. So this is no different than physical fitness or financial literacy or, training to use Excel. It just is a part of the wheel of life, right? Like that sometimes this is just what, my dad always says, everybody's got their thing. That's just your thing. That's what's unique to you. But why do you think that it is not understood, and do you think the trend is changing? Are you seeing that businesses are responding differently? How is the world changing around this?
I think employers are getting more empathetic towards it. I think there's still a long way to go, because I don't think that all employment environments are like us. I was reading an interesting article, and it was talking about, somebody who's battling some type of mental illness or mental health issue. They've got their safe zones that they can talk to their family about it. They can talk to their therapist about it. Their friends and people like that are supportive of their situation and are a resource for them. But it seems that once we step into the employment setting, it's kind of like, geez, I don't think we talk about things like that. That's a little bit too personal. Or if you bring it up, then your employer has to treat you differently because now you have a disability and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of that is starting to give way, and you see more and more employers are creating resources for people within the company to deal with mental health. I read an article about how AstraZeneca will pay half of your deductibles for any mental health treatment that you require. No questions asked.
That's a really great idea. We need to look at our own policy around that.
Yeah.
I want to dig into what you said, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you feel that individuals are the ones that have had the concern to share it with their employer? And then what do you think? And if an employer hears you and I talking and like, no, I want to be a better employer, what could they and should they do to foster an open and a better, open, honest dialogue with their workforce?
I think it's just recognizing that it exists and talking about it, because I also think one of the reasons why people are uncomfortable to bring it up in the workplace is because if your employer is never talking about it, recognizing that it exists, putting in place resources for people, without that awareness, it can't be part of your company's culture. And if it's not part of your company's culture, people are going to feel uncomfortable suffering from it, dealing with the ramifications of it, that can affect, your work, your productivity, your focus, all those kinds of things.
That's so very true. And it sort of is almost a pattern that repeats itself. One leader asks another, hey, how do we handle this? And if you never really handled it, then it kind of stays the way it is in status quo. It doesn't get better. Interesting. Let me allow you to kind of take over the conversation a little bit. What else in preparing and thinking about this dialogue, what other key points did you want to bring forward for our audience?
One of the things that I saw that intrigued me was 85% of people who and I don't know exactly how they do this research, but 85% of the people who have mental health conditions, they go untreated. So again, it's just part of the recognition. I mean, I know, talking to people who are close to me when I was going through it, they would say, hey, go have a drink and relax, or, deal with it. We all have problems. We come from that generation, or our parents' generation, where things like this weren't things you talked about. It was, go put on your shoes and go to work, and stop belly aching and being a baby or whatever. I think, the fact that it is so largely undiagnosed or untreated, it's getting more and more awareness, for sure.
So it's a lack of knowledge, right? It's a lack of information. I mean, it has to be, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it's a stigma that you don't talk about it. Of course, you're right. You just go to work, you just don't worry about it. But you know what? You're talking about generations that could be physical too. That they went to work with bad backs and they went to work with bum knees, and they just, you ignore all that because that's just what you do. It seems like we're more in tune. We may not know what's wrong, but we're more aware that something is.
I feel like we're moving towards, maybe not fast enough, but we're moving towards an idea of compassionate leadership, where people that are in positions of authority in companies have to make sure that they're putting out a message that we're going to have compassion for people of different races, of different ethnic backgrounds, of different sexual orientation, of different, disabilities. And I think they're all just kind of part of the same puzzle. They're all things that, you didn't talk about in the workplace, but those things are all part of who we are. And if we don't bring them into the workplace, and as employers or people that manage people, if we don't recognize, have an awareness, and make it okay for people to talk about it, those people are going to continue to feel uncomfortable and feel like their employer hasn't prioritized a culture of accepting those kinds of things.
That was very special in terms of how you outlined that. And I'd encourage you to write a little something about that notion of a compassionate leader, because the timing really is now. And by the way, I think it doesn't matter if that's you read that from a leadership book or if it's a spiritual point. I kind of think we all are supposed to just treat people really well. It's just being decent. You treat people well. You treat people the way you want to be treated. So, we talk about compassionate leadership, servant leadership, realizing that leaders are here to serve their people. Now, I don't mind saying that I do believe that if you do that well, you do have a stronger culture, stronger team, and a more productive environment. But it's the long road, right? It's the long road. Maybe a segue, but are you seeing anything unique in policies? Let's talk the HR side of things. What are you finding that's on the fringes of what people are doing that are really out in front on this topic?
So I was really happy to see how many resources are out there. I mean, there's organizations that have been created just to try and help deal with workforce mental health issues. I saw lots of articles from colleges, from Forbes, from the New York Times, so it's something that there's a lot of talk around, and I think it's trickling out there. I think, the pandemic is helping both to foster more of those feelings of uneasiness and things like that, where people are dealing with more mental health struggles. But I also feel like it maybe made us all want to be a little bit nicer to each other. So maybe falling into that mindset of being compassionate towards other people, even for employers, I feel like that's becoming more of something that we think about. I know I make more of a point now, whether it's because we're remote or whether it's because I'm evolving or whatever it is, but I check in on people more often than I used to. And I know Mark Hollinger in our company is actively reaching out to people all the time. And the only purpose for his call is to see how they're doing. And that's not something I experienced anywhere else. I mean, if somebody called me, they had a reason, good or bad. But for all of us just to check in, to tell people that if they are having issues, I know you said a number of times that we all need to take a break once in a while. I think there's some companies that are putting policies into place to make sure that people take breaks. Another article I read talked about how in 2020, employees took less PTO than in many, many years. And the reason why was because hey, we're all going through this pandemic. We're working from home now. We can't go anywhere. So we're not going to take the time off. But those mental breaks, whether you go to the shore or on a plane and go somewhere, or you just take time and do something with your family that's not far away, it's so important to the whole person that you are. So I think employers being able to kind of emphasize that and let people know that it's okay to take a break, I think it's important.
It's such, we do these discussions to share knowledge, but sometimes I participate them and I learn myself. So I do really appreciate that last bit. We sort of, the pandemic's hanging on. You can see the end of the light, and hopefully, it's coming fast. But we have a lot of folks who have been afraid that they were going to miss something, or afraid they weren't going to be there when we really, really needed them, because it's just been such an intense year. And we all do need to acknowledge that maybe, it will change, and that it is okay to go back. We're never going to get it back the way it was, but at least people could take a vacation, right? And do that. I was trying to think of the right terminology. You might be able to help me. We have Health Advocate, which is that employee service that, you tend to call for a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Are there any other programs outside of that monthly employee program like that? Anything extra that you like? Is there something placers should be looking at beyond what we're doing to help, or that another employer should look at that kind of you laid out a lot, but I'll ask what else is out there?
So I think a lot of your treatment professionals in this area have different programs that they offer where they can come into your company and talk about it. They can be a resource to your employees if they're struggling with something and need to talk. A quick Google search will yield dozens of different nonprofit organizations that focus on workplace mental health issues and just mental health in general. There are a lot of resources out there. And, God forbid you get to a point where, somebody is struggling so much with those and doesn't take the time to find them. So I'm hoping that people, and I'm not an expert. I mean, I didn't go to school for this. I'm not a therapist, nothing like that. I'm just somebody who's kind of dealt with it and have a soft spot in my heart for other people that go through it. And I really hope that people accept that there's nothing wrong with having struggles with your mental health, and ask for help when they need it, and recognize that hey, we all don't want to take pills we don't have to, or we all don't want to admit that we're going to a shrink or going to a therapist or whatever you want to say. There's nothing wrong with needing help. We all need help in some way, shape, or form. So I'm hoping that stigma continues to go away.
Well, Brian, and I'll sort of summarize my thinking on this. There's been feelings of isolation brought on by being at home for many. There's been a threat to safety, or however you want to describe that, the fear associated, with that sense that you could die. I mean, that's a very rare thing. So perhaps there's an openness in that, we've all kind of been through this thing, and whether you went to work or worked at home or lost your job through this, everybody's had this unique set of circumstances and knows somebody who's gone through something related to a mental health challenge. I think it's brought it to the forefront. Why don't you bring us home with a summary, and if there's any resources you want our audience to maybe tap if they have any other questions.
So I don't have any resources readily available, but I will write something and share that at some point that will include some links to places to go for help. I think the biggest thing I would say is, from a summary standpoint, for an employer, check in on your people, demonstrate through your actions and the things you say that you understand and accept mental health challenges can be a part of all of our lives, and that people don't need to fear for their job or any sort of judgment when they ask for help, and just create that culture of awareness and acceptance that these are things that people go through.
So thank you, Brian. Again, I'm Chris Burkhardt. I'm with Brian Saleo. This is our Problems We Solve series, where we anticipate customer prospect questions or things we've heard from our company that we think are important. And Brian, thank you. You've done a great job in bringing mental health forward at a critical moment. If you want to talk to anyone in the business, Brian, why don't you at least give them your email and/or way you'd like to be reached?
Sure.
Seems to be a good way to wrap these up.
Sure. You can reach me by email at bseleo, that's SELEYO @myplacers.com, or call the office, and they almost always can find me.
Yeah. Until next time.
See you, everybody.